Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire once again, people. Now today we're in a big village just to the east of Driffield. It's just to the south of the A614 between the town and Bridlington on the coast. It's a big old village. It's going to take me a long time to walk around this one. I'm estimating about an hour and a half, could even be 2 hours. Its name is Nafferton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Nafferton, Nattfari's farm. This week in the East Riding we're tackling a big village, one which I know a few of you have been waiting for. This is Nafferton, located on the eastern side of Driffield just south of the A614. It's a linear village in essence, much like many others in the East Riding, but it's grown considerably since it was first settled. Stretching from north to south for around a mile, Nafferton's central area is by far one of the prettiest in the county. That's thanks in no small part to the Mere, a former mill pond which once drove the waterwheels of Nafferton Mills. The crystal clear waters of both it and the fast flowing mill race which flows into the Driffield Navigation downstream accentuate the beauty of this already fabulous village. There are landmarks aplenty, ranging from the very old to the very new. The oldest is the church, which stands on a unique geological feature. The newest include the recreation club built thanks to the Nafferton Fioffies Trust less than a decade ago, and a brand new spa shop and petrol station which is soon due to open. Elsewhere there's also a railway station, 3 pubs, a couple of chapels and the site of an old manor house. There's also a bit of wartime history here too, to speak of near the school. So let's get our walk on and see what Nafferton is all about. Before we get going around Nafferton, we have to mention Pockthorpe. Pockthorpe lies to the north of the A614 and it's a hamlet which is centred around a 19th century hall and a modern farm. It's not exactly a thriving metropolis, but it's notable thanks to its earthworks. Some are the remains of a medieval ridge and furrow system, but the rest are the foundations of Pockthorpe's medieval settlement. Pockthorpe was recorded as Pockthorpe in the Domesday Book and was under the jurisdiction of Nafferton Manor, held by William of Percy. It was mentioned in a grant dated 1310, and a chapel dedicated to St Edmund the King was recorded in 1328. Along with many other Wolds villages like Swaythorpe, which we covered last time out, it became impoverished following the Black Death. However, Pockthorpe was still in existence in 1650 when it was noted in a survey. In the 18th century, the village changed hands several times until it was enclosed in 1772. The hamlet was then finally cleared of its last tenants, leaving only the hall in existence. In 1849, part of the hall was demolished to make way for the Victorian house that stands there today. Oh, and while we're on about things to the north of the main village, this is Nafferton's former windmill, which is off the A614. It's the first thing that greets you on the road from Bridlington. We start on Middle Street, close to a former pub called the King's Head. That's the grey building in shop now. It closed in 2017 and hasn't opened again since. Nafferton Fisheries was also closed here, but this is very much still in business. It occupies a prominent spot in the heart of the village, and that's a good thing if you ask me. Middle Street has always been Nafferton's main commercial centre, and it's a shallow hill at this point. A bit further up that hill is the village's only shop, which is open 7 days a week. There will soon be another shop in Nafferton. Stick with me, I'll show you where later. Let's get this one marked off then, shall we? Here's a parish notice board on the wall outside the shop. Job done. Over the road is the village hall, but as you can probably tell, this started life as something else. It was originally a shepherd's hall. It was built in 1861 for the Ancient Order of Shepherds, a prominent Nafferton society. It was bought by Charles Longbottom of Nafferton Hall in 1946 and given to the village. It's now the go-to place for local groups, social clubs and family events. Let's continue up the hill a bit further. In a moment, Middle Street will give way to the High Street. This little brick hut will be our finishing point later. It's a chiropractic clinic, but I reckon it was originally something else. The road bends left and now we're at the Methodist Chapel. This was built in 1907 with money from the Hatfield Memorial Fund. The current building is the third to have stood on this very same site. The first was built in 1792. There were many other chapels in Nafferton, including premises on Coppergate and Priestgate. Many were important community centres. Just up the High Street is a former temperance hall, another building where people met and socialised. The High Street turns back north after that and continues up towards the A614 bypass, which slices its way through the wolds between Driffield and Bridlington. This area is mostly housing, but there are a couple of buildings worth mentioning. One of them is a gigantic greyish-white house that was an old school. This is the building in question. With no date stones or any obvious clues as to its history, at this point I was guessing a little bit. However, I later found out quite a lot about that building and its links to some other things around Nafferton. We're about to hit a junction now. So far it's everything we've come to expect, isn't it, from an East Riding village? All the shops and facilities are along this main street. There's very few things that aren't. The one thing that I can think of that is definitely not on the main street is the playing field and the sports complex, but we'll see that towards the end of this video. The other facilities continue up there and to the south of where we began. There is one other thing as well that's not on this main drag, and that's the main bus stop. If you turn down Driffield Road to the left here, the bus stop is just there. That's where most people catch the bus to go to the likes of Bridlington and Driffield. We'll check that out. There's a phone box there too, and then we'll continue along the main road. As well as the bus stop, Driffield Road also has a phone box, but it was empty. Public transport wise, from here you can catch the number 121, which runs between Bridlington and Hull via Driffield. The bus shelter was built in 1951 to celebrate the Festival of Britain. It was designed by a Mr. S. Wrigglesworth and it was built by local tradesmen. It has a great little information board which shows the Nafferton Heritage Trail. Effectively, this trail follows the same route as the one I created, except mine's a bit longer. The board also confirmed what that school building was, a national school built in 1815. Next we have not just one but two pubs. First up on the corner is the Cross Keys, a family-run gastropub which has a separate contemporary restaurant called Petro's. This pub hosts a regular quiz night, and it's where the Nafferton Acoustic Group play. Both are on a monthly basis. Just up the street is pub number 2, the Star Inn. This one's more about accommodation, which can be found across the car park in a self-contained area separate to the main building. In the summer, you'll often find a lot of people in its beer garden because it's considered to be a really good little sun trap. Up the road we come to a construction site. This is going to be a brand new Spar store and petrol station located on the site of the former five-way service station. Features of the store will include a butcher's counter run by Graham Eyes. Largely based in Cumbria and Durham, this store will mark the company's first move into Yorkshire. Up here it's pretty much all residential barring the new shop. We're in the northernmost reaches of the village now on New Road, so it's time to head back south again. We've got to dig a little bit to find our next landmark because it's hiding away amongst all this suburbia. Let's go into Parsonage Close now, and in doing so we're walking towards Nafferton Hall. Although vastly obscured by trees and some high walls, Nafferton Hall remains a key village landmark, even if relatively little is known about it. These are its gates. The hall isn't listed, but one has to wonder why. This building is the former coach house, which was converted into a residence in 2013 by renowned developer Jonathan Walker from Lund. We already know Charles Longbottom lived in the hall, but to paraphrase Lloyd Grossman, it makes you wonder who else might have lived in a house like this. After using a little linkway between Parsonage Close and the High Street, we find ourselves on a path which runs parallel to Middle Street for a good quarter of a mile. It skirts the edge of a field, and these are the views away to the west. This will take us into the churchyard of All Saints, the oldest surviving building in the village. Designated a Grade 1 listed building in 1966, part of this church date from the 13th century. Its best known vicar was the 19th century parson naturalist Francis Orpen Morris. He was the author of a series of highly successful books on birds, butterflies and moths. If you like your Civil War history, the church has a few interesting bits to look at. There's an inscription from the War of the Roses, and the base of the tower has marks from the fighting. You may notice too that this one is on a little mound. It's part of a natural geological feature, a buried cliff face that runs all the way from Suerby to Hessel. Over the road is another attractive building which has very little recorded history. It was formerly the Parish Jubilee Room, and it's now known as Greystones. It does have a stone set into its wall, but it was hard to read, owing to weathering. Next door is another branch of the Batter Country Store. You may remember we spoke about them in the Gate Helmsley episode in Rydale a while ago. Moving on, next we have pub number 3, this time the Blue Bell. The first thing I noticed about this was the writing on its walls. It tells you part of the pub's history. It began life as Hodgson's Alehouse in 1750 before becoming the Blue Bell in 1895. So it remains today. Beyond the pub it becomes residential, except for the primary school which is behind us. When opened, it replaced the old National School on Middle Street that we saw earlier. Yes indeed, we have reached the school. It's not the easiest one to see because there's quite a high bank in front of the main building there, but you can just about see it through the trees. So we'll talk a bit about the school, then we're going to take a left turn and go through a housing estate that'll take us down towards the train station. Nafferton Primary was built in 1914. The old National School then became an infant's. This setup continued until the 1970s, when the latter was turned into a private school called St Francis's. Nafferton Primary is the only school in the village today. Next to the school was a piece of wartime history. Nafferton's prisoner of war camp was a series of long wooden huts that housed Germans and Italians who worked on the local farms during World War II. The site is now partially under Westfield Close today, having been built over. Okay, time to go through that housing estate. Here's a montage. Now we've arrived at the railway station, which is right on the southern edge of the village. Nafferton is the only modern station that lies between the two towns of Driffield and Bridlington. It's on the Yorkshire Coast Railway, which we know as the Hull to Scarborough line. People often mistake the station house for a normal railway station building. It's now a private residence. This station has served Nafferton since 1846. Its architect was George Townsend Andrews. He was responsible for many other stations across Yorkshire around that time, and we already know that because we've met him before. Over the line is a small organic market garden called Green Growers, and close by is Spittle Beck, which was used as a sheep wash for over a century. To get back over the line, we're using a footpath a few hundred yards away from those to the east. Not just one, but 2 trains hurtle past me here. I can never resist an opportunity to catch them. This area would have looked different just 20 years ago because there was once a flour mill near the railway and the station, but it was pulled down in 2005. In any event, running close to us here is a beautiful, fast-flowing mill race, Nafferton Beck. Well, I have to say, folks, this is a pretty little spot, this. It really is. As you come along the path, you're heading through a series of fields. In a minute we're going to be seeing the site of the old manor house, but where the path sort of runs really close to the water, this is actually very, very pretty, but that water is very, very deep, so don't go into it no matter what you do. It might look pretty, but trust me, it's probably very dangerous in there. If you want to know how deep this beck is, pause the video and zoom in. It might be clear, but trust me, it's not safe in there. We're going to follow the beck for a short way next. In doing so, we're crossing an area known as the Parks. This was ancient parkland, and it belonged to Nether Hall, the alternative name for Nafferton's former manor house, which was owned by the Constable family. The house no longer stands and had either fallen down or been torn down before 1850. It was a moated site, so theoretically it stood on an island. Earthworks remain, and they can be seen here over the beck. Before leaving the Parks, you will notice some buildings off to the right which sit on top of Nafferton Beck. In the Domesday Book, a watermill was mentioned here, which the villagers would have used to grind wheat and corn. In 1640 it was divided into two so that it could also shell oats and grind malt. That explains the name of the Maltings, brand new houses which now sit on the site of the mill, which was demolished in 1986. Although the mill is gone, the water wheel is still here in its original location. Let's go up Preesgate now to see where the water that drove that wheel came from. The answer is from this huge mill pond in the middle of the village. This is actually a mere, and it's fed by 21 natural springs. Without a doubt, this has to be one of the prettiest in the East Riding. The water is absolutely crystal clear, just like the beck. The island was created in 1902 to mark the coronation of Edward VII. The tree on it is a willow planted in 1953 to mark the coronation of Elizabeth II. These two facts give the little atoll a name, Coronation Island. At the northwestern corner of the mere are the beautiful Jubilee Gardens, where carols are often sung at Christmas time. We're back at the church again. This time we're under the big mound on which it sits. On the tall wall that fronts it is a huge war memorial. This shows the names of all 239 Nafferton men who served in World War I. 26 of them did not return. If you carry on up the street, you'll return to the start point. The building with the pink sign over its door is a beauty salon, but that's really all there is of note here. We're almost all the way around the route, but we've got one final area to cover, everything to the east of Middle Street. Come with me through another residential area as we approach the finish line. Our last major landmark is the Nafferton Recreation Club. This was built and opened in 2017, and its construction was funded by the Nafferton Feoffees Charities Trust. As a result, the main building's official name is the Feoffees Hall. The centre provides extensive sports facilities and a public function room, as well as the base for Nafferton Under 5's preschool. This stone in the wall confirms the building's links to the Feoffees. Alongside the hall is an allotment oasis and several sports clubs. Here's the tennis courts. A bowling green is beyond these, and the cricket club is behind us. And of course, where there's playing fields, there's usually a playground, and there is one here. This is brand new as well. As you can see, it was built for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2022, so it's only been here a couple of years. And doesn't that look gorgeous in the sun, which is starting to come out now to show Nafferton off in all its glory. Right, we are virtually done, because from here it's a simple case of walking back to the main street, taking a left turn and heading down to where I parked the car, not far from the shop and the chip shop. Oh, chip shop. I wonder if it's open now. Let's go and see. It wasn't, unfortunately, so I had to make do with a handful of items from the shop instead for food before I made my way towards the next one. Once over the railway line, civilization starts to become a little more sparse, but the water features become more plentiful. Join me next week to see what I mean. Laters all. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.